Intamin Amusement Rides, they have basically revolutionized the roller coaster market to what they are today. The company started back in 1967, building their first ever roller coaster in 1979. Granted, this was a kiddie coaster known as Wilderness Run at Cedar Point, but after that, they have built over 164 coasters worldwide and is one of the top roller coaster manufacturers in the world today. So this company, they are known for taking risks. They are not afraid to go outside the box and build a roller coaster that's a bit strange, maybe will not work out the way they want it to, or it could be one of the best roller coasters in the entire world. They have built the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the entire world, so they are not scared to innovate and go for the highest record there is. But with that being said, there are a lot of roller coasters that Intamin has produced that are a bit strange, they may have not worked out, or the company would rather just forget about it entirely. So I want to see what are some of the most rare and unique roller coaster models that Intamin has ever produced. So with that being said, it's time to get to the numbers. Number 10, the Intamin Swiss Bob Coaster. Now, this ride is meant to simulate something like an Olympic bobsled. It goes down and maneuvers across a lot of turns, swinging up on the half-pipe kind of design. Now, the coaster isn't actually attached to the track, it's more like in a free-moving mode. Now, there haven't been that many of these coasters produced, considering only 5 were ever made. Most of them were relocated and only 2 are left in operation, that being La Vibora at Six Flags Over Texas and Alpine Bobsled at the Great Escape, with that ride being relocated from Six Flags Great America as Rolling Thunder back in 1998. Now, I wouldn't consider this ride model that much higher on the list, mainly because some other manufacturers, they have seen this concept and try to apply it themselves at some parks, so this ride Intamin made isn't the most unique ride in the world, considering companies like Mack Rides, they built coasters like Avalanche King's Dominion, but this coaster is pretty rare considering there's only 2 of these bobsled coasters by Intamin still left in the world, with the most recent one at Efteling being torn down in 2019. Number 9, the Intamin Halfpipe. Now, the Intamin Halfpipe is mainly a simple design, using a U-shaped layout by just going up 2 large spires using the LSM launch, with the train being kind of a skateboard shape, and the seats on it actually rotate in a 360-degree axis of rotation. Now, there have only been 4 of the original Halfpipe models, and only 2 are still left in operation. The Intamin Halfpipe coaster was mainly a proof of concept for the Intamin Surf Rider coaster, which is pretty much the same thing, using the U-shaped layout, having the LSM launches, and the skateboard train with the rotating seats. I mean, you're probably familiar with that, considering the newest one was built at Nickelodeon Universe at the American Dream Mall, that ride being Timmy Turner's Halfpipe. But now moving on to number 8, it's the Intamin Wing Rider coaster. Now, there've only been one of these coasters built, that being a Furios Bacco at Port Aventura, and this coaster is known for having very fast, low-to-the-ground transitions, considering the ride does not really go off the ground, and it has a signature inversion with that inline twist and that great swoop across the water. Now, why there haven't really been many more of these coasters, that could be because in 2007, the next year, the stock market had a really big hit, so many people probably didn't want to buy a big Intamin coaster, especially one that was really critically acclaimed, because not many people enjoy this coaster. There are very few people that actually like Furios Bacco. And again, in 2011, when B&M introduced their version of the wing coaster, this ride just seemed outdated, sidetracked, and not that important anymore. And the fact that Thunderbird was released in 2015 and this was a wing launch coaster, it just didn't look that promising for another wing rider coaster to ever be built at another park. Number 7, the Intamin stand-up coaster. Now, in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, the stand-up coaster was all the rage. Many companies decided to build their own version of the stand-up coaster, B&M building their first version with Iron Wolf, Togo making a few models, so it only made sense for Intamin to want to build a few coasters like this, so they worked with Giovanola to build these rides, but they only sold about 3 of them. One was at a park called Summerlane, but then the ride was relocated to Luron, where it would close in 2016 as Cobra. One was sold to Six Flags Magic Mountain, but then after 2 years, it was moved between park after park during their ride rotation period. Then, of course, the last one in operation at Drayton Manor, known as Shockwave. This one being the last one opened in 1994, being over 120 feet high, 53 miles per hour, featuring 4 inversions, so it is the largest of the Intamin stand-up coaster. Hopefully, the last Intamin stand-up coaster can last a little longer, considering most stand-up coasters all around the world are being torn down. So hopefully, the last Intamin stand-up coaster can last a little longer for people to enjoy for a few more years. Number 6, the Intamin Suspended Looping Coaster. Now, like the Intamin stand-up coaster, Intamin did not really sell that many of these models. Actually, only 2 were ever built. They were both called Tornado. One was at Parque de Atracciones. The ride was 98 feet, had 3 inversions. Then the second one was built at Intamin Amusement Park, the ride having 5 inversions and being over 89 feet tall. Unfortunately, Intamin, they haven't built many inverted coasters in their time. Parks just didn't really have a desire to buy an inverted coaster from Intamin, and these were one of the only inverted coasters they ever produced in their long lifespan. But there was another inverted coaster, but that's coming at number 5, which is the Intamin Suspended Catapult Coaster. Now, the Intamin Suspended Catapult Coaster is very loved when it was still in operation. They only built one, that was Volcano the Blast Coaster at King's Dominion, and was torn down, unfortunately, in 2019. The ride was not that long, it only had 2,757 feet of track, but it went 70 miles per hour, had 4 inversions, having 3 heartline rolls, and it had a very unique inversion going out of the volcano into a rollout, and just swerving all around the big man-made volcano. Unfortunately, Intamin has never made another suspended catapult coaster, so this was the only one and it's no longer in operation. But many fans love this roller coaster for being the only inverted coaster that featured a launch that reached over 70 miles per hour. So it's a shame this coaster had to be torn down in 2019. Now at number 4 is something called the Double Roller Coaster, and you can honestly argue that this coaster doesn't even belong in the list. Not because it's not unique, but because it never actually opened to the public. It's been sitting SPNO for almost 40 years now. The Double Roller Coaster was built at a park called Parque de la Ciudad. It was in Argentina and was something called Vertigorama. Intamin only built one of these coasters. It was supposed to be a racing coaster. They worked with Giovanola on this ride when they were first starting, because this was the 3rd coaster Intamin has ever made. It was right after American Eagle, so they already built a racing coaster beforehand, but this was a steel racing coaster. Now, no one has ever ridden this coaster because there was reports like they never got the electrical equipment they needed to have the coaster operational, and for some reason they never arrived, and the coaster was just sitting there since '83, 1 year after the park opened. The Double Roller Coaster Vertigorama, it's kind of a mystery, but despite the ride not opening, it is pretty interesting. That was one of Intamin's only few racing steel roller coasters, and one that was kind of inspired by Giovanola on how they kind of designed their roller coasters. I mean, it probably wouldn't have been that good, but despite that, I personally believe this ride deserves to be on the list, despite it never actually opening to the public ever. Number 3, the Intamin Space Diver Coaster. Now, only one of these coasters were ever made. It was a very compact ride. It was meant to be a compact ride, the only one starting at Six Flags Great America. And it was part of the ride rotation program, where Six Flags would move roller coasters from one park to another. It started at Great America for 2 years. In 1987, it moved to Six Flags Over Georgia, then moved to Six Flags Magic Mountain, where it would stay there for over 11 years until eventually in 2003, the ride Flashback, previously known as Z-Force, was then torn down. Not many people really liked this coaster. Many complained it had a rattle, it was a headbanger, but despite how weird, absurd, strange this coaster is, it was one of Intamin's most bizarre designs they ever came up with. Intamin called it the world's only hairpin dive drop coaster. The ride featured 6 540-degree drops and had only 1,900 feet of very compact, twisted track. So despite how terrible this coaster was, how many people didn't like this ride, I gotta commend Intamin for going outside the box on this one, but let's thank God they never built another one of these after '85. Number 2 is the Intamin Fly Rider. Now, this coaster is basically like an impulse coaster, along with a wing rider coaster. So it has a very large U shape, and it goes over 62.1 miles per hour, and it goes up 2 large 187-foot tall vertical spikes. And the coaster car is basically a wing coaster, so you sit on either side of the train while it's going up these 2 large vertical spikes. Now, unfortunately, this coaster was built in 2013, but it's been closed since 2014. It's been sitting there SPNO for a very long time. And after 6 years, we don't really know if this coaster is going to reopen. Now, the coaster is located at Victory Kingdom all the way in China. Now, that park, we don't really know the situation with that place. I mean, they seem to have a lot of problems considering they can't actually get most of their rides open at any given day. And this is their largest coaster they have and has not been open for a long time. So this park doesn't seem to know how to manage their rides and get them operational. So because of that, I don't really know if this coaster is ever going to reopen or it's just going to be sitting there, and no sign of it opening is ever going to happen. And that's a shame considering how diverse this coaster is from many different Intamin shuttle coasters, so it's just a real waste that this coaster had to go to a park like this. Number 1 is the Intamin Spiral Coaster. Now, this ride is very bizarre. You would not guess this coaster was ever built by Intamin. Only one model was ever built of this coaster. It was built in 1996 at a place called Sky Plaza in South Korea. It was known as Comet. Now, why Intamin built this roller coaster? It was meant to compete with Togo with their Ultra Twister models, so they built this pipeline roller coaster. The reason it was built in South Korea, because Togo, they really dominated the Asian market at the time they were still operating. And the fact that Togo Ultra Twisters were going to America, it seemed like a chance they were willing to make. But this coaster only lasted 3 years. It closed in 1999 at Sky Plaza. I don't know why it closed. It could be because the park closed. RCDB says it closed between 1999 and 2014. So I can't really see if they closed the ride because of maintenance issues or because of a failing park. Then the coaster was relocated to Al Shalab Leisure Park over in the Middle East. It was just known as Spiral Coaster for 5 years. It was finished in 2000, but then was torn down in 2005, and that was the end of the Intamin Spiral Coaster. Just for how weird and funky this Togo knockoff is, it just doesn't fit in Intamin's portfolio of roller coaster models they've created. That's why I consider it the most unique Intamin coaster they ever created. So leave in the comments below, what's your favorite Intamin coaster model? Or do you think there's a model that you think deserves to be on the list? Leave all that in the comments below. Be sure to consider subscribing to Great American Coasters, and I'll see you guys next time.